Okay, so the first question, you got to watch the end. You got to listen to the end. The first question that I sent over to Lewis and myself was favorite, and favorite spelled with a U, by the way, because I'm Canadian.
God.
Favorite book this year. I also think I mentioned that it could be more than one if you want. I have a couple options for a few of these.
I have like
so
5 for each.
5? Okay, I went to 2.
I don't
went
know.
For 2.
Yeah, I had a lot. It was
Okay.
like, picking a favorite food or song or any
Impossible.
of these.
So stop.
Yeah,
So how about you start?
it's quite hard.
We'll go back and forth. I only have 2, so well, I mean, I
You
could
want me to
probably
start?
pull another one. You know what? Actually, I have 3. And we're all good. So we have 3. I have 3. I'm gonna write it down because I just forgot about it.
And you want me to go
Okay,
first?
You start.
And we're doing book.
We're doing book. Favorite book.
Okay.
Favorites.
Yeah.
One of favorites.
I mean, yeah, this one was hard. I will say, and I'm thinking about your recent video of like not always having to go through the whole book. So like some of these, when I mention them, it's not like the whole thing. It might just be like one portion of the book. So yeah, I have a lot. 12 Rules was really good.
Oh yeah.
Not the first one. Yeah, just like that one. Even that one chapter, like treat yourself like someone you're responsible for helping.
Yes.
That's like one of my favorite.
Is this your first year? And sorry,
No.
I want to dive into each book a little bit so we can do this. But
yeah,
is this your first year? This is not your first year reading it.
No, that's the other thing too. I thought like on another part that we're gonna go over, one of the quotes, kind of already leading into it, but one of the quotes was like from last year, but like it's still one of my favorites, but now in a different way.
I wouldn't put too much trust in that. I think a lot of this stuff are like these. It's not like new books that came out this year or you read this year, just like books that had a big impact on you this year. So that's good. So 12 Rules.
12 Rules was one.
Nice.
Wooden on leadership, and I only read like the Kindle preview to it. I haven't even read that much into it.
Wooden on leadership, like, is that the title of the book?
Yeah, it's like the John Wooden book.
And is it by him? Is it?
Yeah, he wrote it when he was like, from what I'm aware, like when he was like 95 when he wrote it.
Unreal.
Yeah. Unreal. And I'll go into this on another topic too, but he didn't talk about. I think the one sentence literally said he never uttered the word winning. Like he's all about Nick Saban's is the process, but like focusing on what's in your control and focusing on the process, not the outcome. So that was one. $100 million Leads was, I have to throw it out there.
Yeah.
Great, simple, concise, probably one of the most actionable books I've ever read for sure. So
yeah, Leads for sure. Leads was one of those books where I just consumed offers because it was like almost like, not that there was less actionable advice in there, but it was just like more consumable. I found with Leads, I actually had to stop reading it at one point because I'm like, hey, I'm not actually doing any of this yet. So I can't I almost felt guilty about like breezing through it because there was so much that you could implement in that book that I was like, I got to stop until like I get to this, And then it's almost like,
breathe out.
It's almost like it's like a textbook. It's almost like referenceable, like in like, okay. Cause I wrote an ad at one point for that leaf business I was doing. And I'm like, okay, how do I write like good, like copy? And I like went back to the chapter, I referenced it and I was like, oh, like, and I actually used the stuff from the book. So pretty cool.
Sweet.
It's a cool book.
Yes, sir. Do you want me to go over the next two? Or you want?
I'll do a couple here, or we can leapfrog here. The first one, this is probably no surprise. I made a YouTube video about it this year.
I knew it.
Which I don't do much about books, but this book was so good, and I hate to tease everyone here and not talk about it, but I feel like everyone online's talking about it. Anytime it gets brought up, someone's like, "Oh, I've heard so much good things about it." Anyways, not to hype it up too much, but Walter Isaacson is a famous biographer, and he's done books on Steve Jobs, Leonardo da Vinci, Albert Einstein, etc. The book that one of my favorite books this year, I don't know if it's my favorite, but one of them for sure is Elon Musk, his biography on Elon Musk. I made a video on it. I think a few things really stuck out to me. One is that the book did a really good job of like humanizing Elon. I think when you think about the richest man in the world, it's like, oh yeah, like you either love him or you hate him, and he's very polarizing. And I think the book was a really good neutral stance on just like, he is the way he is because of everything that's happened to him. He had a pretty crazy childhood. Not that it necessarily justifies any of this stuff, like the bad stuff, but like it just made him the kind of guy that
He's
he
a
was
human.
today. He's a human, and I think that was like a huge takeaway for me. And also, it was one of the first books that like I think I had read it kind of after the point that I had kind of listened to some of David Senra's stuff on Founders, and with the idea of like I want to go into this biography looking for themes. And so it was the first biography that I read where I was like, okay, he's like a huge risk taker. Okay, he has like a crazy sense of urgency, like all these sorts of things where I went into the biography and like really had that frame of like, I'm looking for lessons, not like I'm just trying to read this thing. And so I think that's how I'm going to go forward with a lot of my biographies in the future. But yeah, Elon Musk by Walter Isaacson, pretty long. It's like 600 pages or something, but like well worth the read. Like the last bit of it's a lot on Twitter. And honestly, I don't know if you like, it kind of dragged on there, but really good book. Really, really good book. I would recommend everyone to read it, obviously.
No, for sure. I read a little bit of it. I did see Chris Williamson had like an end of the year thing with like a couple of his buddies. And George, do you know George Mack?
Love George Mack.
Yeah, he's sweet. And he brought up the book and he's like, I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, you know, the whole book can kind of be summed up in somebody walks up to Elon and is like, we can't do this. And then Elon's like, does it go against the law of physics? And they're like, well, no. And he's like, all right, you got 6 weeks. that's kind of like the whole big part of the book. But
it's so true, man. I think one of the big things was like a huge topic I was talking about was self-limiting beliefs in that book. Like Elon doesn't have those. Like he actually, Walter Isaacson used the term reality distortion field in the book, but that was applied to Steve Jobs specifically when he wrote that biography on him. But the same thing goes for Elon. And I think a lot of successful people have this like it's almost like, no, like that dude, that's not going to work. It's like, no, it's going to work. We're going to make it work. And it's going to be done in, like you said, like 6 weeks. It's like, that's going to take 5 years. Oh, we'll figure it out. And then they figure it out.
Days. Yeah.
They figure it out. And if they don't, the timeline at the very least is cut in like a half or a third.
Yeah.
Like they thought it was going to take 5 years. Now it takes not 6 weeks, 12 months though. It's like, whoa.
That's a great point though. Cause it's not always perfect, but like either way, it just speeds things up so fast, like so much.
100%, dude. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
I think on Kindle, when I looked up favorite part of Kindle, you can like search words, like find a sentence. And I really want to say on Kindle, maybe I'll look it up.
Yeah, I remember you were telling me that like I had
if you like type in urgency or deadline, I think there's like 29 times it comes up. If you look up like deadline or like expectations, or I forget what it was, but it was around that, like sense of urgency, unrealistic deadlines. I think that was maybe the phrase, and it came up like a lot.
Yeah.
So
I pride myself, or I was like so super proud of myself for like pulling these insights out, and I realized like if you read the book and you didn't come away with that takeaway, you're an idiot. You know, like like it's said so many times. So that was a great book.
Sweet.
I have 2 more. How many more do you have?
Yeah, go for let's do one more and then we can jump in.
One more, okay. This is also this is technically a memoir. So I feel like a lot of the books I've been interested in this year are like about people. I don't know. I'm finding that more interesting than like the typical like self-development books.
Somebody's story bio. Yeah. What is a memoir technically?
A memoir is an autobiography about a very specific point in someone's life. An autobiography is supposed to indicate like a whole person's life told by that person. Nice. And a biography is the same thing, but told by someone else. And a memoir is just a very short period of that person's life, or a period of that person's life told by them.
Gotcha. So one season, one chapter. Gotcha.
One season, one chapter. And this one is about a gentleman who made a shoe company.
Oh, yes.
And I forgot about this. So this book I read in the middle of the year, but it's Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. Phil Knight, for everyone who doesn't know, was the guy who made Nike. And I think the book is about 6 or 7 years, and like that's the timeline of the book. And the thing I like most about the book is that, one, it's just a crazy story. You think about Nike and you don't even realize, like, when you hear a huge company like that, you don't even realize like someone made that. Like someone made Nike. You just like, it just exists in the world today, and you're like, you forget that was a grinding. Yeah, there was a day one. Exactly. And so the thing I like, and I actually heard this from Hormozy, and I only realized the book really resonated with me, but Hormozy, of course, puts it into super simple terms for why he enjoyed the book so much. And I was like, that's actually why I enjoyed the book so much. And he said, when you read Shoe Dog, Phil Knight basically writes about getting kicked in the teeth for 7 years. And then in the last chapter of the book, he says, but I wish I could do it all again. And the whole lesson I took away from it was picking the right thing to do with your life. Like Phil picked the right thing to do. And so I'm going to actually pull up a quote. I should have prepared this, but mind my tumbling books. He says in the last chapter, right here, he goes, he's like talking about what advice he'd give to younger people. And he goes, I tell them to hit pause, think long and hard about how they want to spend their time and with whom they want to spend it for the next 40 years. I tell men and women in their mid-20s to not settle for a job or a profession or even a career. Seek a calling. And this is the part I like. He goes, if you're following your calling, the fatigue will be easier to bear, the disappointments will be fuel, and the highs will be like nothing you've ever felt. So I guess, once again, the whole thing was just like, it was a bunch of pain and suffering for him to go through to build that company, but like he loved it. So like it was okay. Like he could get through it. And he says he wishes he could do it all again at the very end, which is super cool and
that's wild.
Like sentimental moment. But yeah, I love that book. So good. Once again, like if I read through that again, I'm sure you could look through like the lens of like how I walked through the Elon book and learn through, like figure out a bunch of lessons to pull from it. But it was ghost written, I found out, but it's some of the best writing, some of the best writing I've ever read. Like it's so beautiful. Warren Buffett on the front page said on the front cover, the best book I read last year. Phil is a ... gifted storyteller. Warren Buffett said that. So,
all right, that's all I need. That's incredible.
Yeah, man. So that's those are 1 and 2. I have a third one. It's kind of a add-on. We'll talk about it after you go, but yeah.
Okay, cool. My next one is actually from one of the authors that you started off with, and it is Walter Isaacson's, I guess, I don't know. I mean, technically it's a biography, but it's like a collection of, so it's Invent and Wander, and it's like Jeff Bezos, I guess, biography, but it's like a collection of his shareholder meetings or shareholder letters.
Okay.
Rather. And then he like writes about it as well. And just go ahead.
No, sorry, I forgot that we talked about this, but I forgot he wrote a book about. I didn't realize he wrote a book about Jeff. Anyways, sorry.
Yeah, and I saw, so also Jeff just went on Lex Fridman, which is like to my knowledge the first long form interview he's ever done. And Lex kind of started it off with, I think it was from Invent and Wander, that it was somebody else like interviewing Walter, and I forget what the exact question was, but it was like, you know, who do you like? Who's the greatest? I don't know if it was like, who's the greatest entrepreneur today, something like that. And he's like, you know, I've done books on Einstein and, you know, all the guys that you mentioned. He's like, the one guy that like comes to mind for me is Jeff. And this book is just, it's really talking about frames like to look through. It's just really interesting to read about how he was thinking about Amazon, where they were at through the lens of today. And then he's like writing in like, you know, 1994. I think that's when they started. And then all the way up to, I didn't like read everything, but like, his journey, like how he was writing and how he was thinking about Amazon. And he's like the clearest. I saw another, it was only YouTube shorts, and it was some executive talking about Jeff Bezos. And he was saying, you know, a lot of people think about Jeff like he's some messiah that like comes down from the hill and is like, you know, this is the way it's going to be done. And like, he's all going to snap his fingers. And that's not the way Jeff is. I guess Jeff is just the clearest. I'll have to like look it back up and I want to hear it again, but he's like the clearest thinker. And like when you hear him talk, especially like on Lex or like you read his shareholder letters, he's not overcomplicate. Like he speaks very simply. His ideas and frameworks are super simple, but they're so effective. And like the type, we've gone over it, but like the way he makes decisions, he didn't talk about it extensively in the book, but like it's a concept that I'll talk about later. Day one thinking. And it was just it was incredible. It is incredible. I recommend it to anybody. Especially when here's the last frame I'll say. Because I heard it when Hormozy went on, what was it, Iced Coffee Hour? I think we talked about this. He's like, how much would it cost if you like, you know, sit down and talk to you or whatever for an hour, and I don't know what Hormozy said. Maybe it was like 50 grand or even 100
Something
grand.
like that, yeah.
Yeah. And for Jeff, it's like more than that. It would be what, I don't know, $1 billion an hour? Maybe not that.
Yeah, he'd probably charge $1 million
I
an
don't
hour.
know.
I don't know, like probably more.
Million bucks an hour. Yeah, that sounds fair. So with the
fair.
with the fair, the podcast, and then like Invent and Wander, that's like $1 million an hour or whatever. It gets a lot. So
yeah,
there's a lot.
That's a good frame. I like that.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Well, that's the argument I make for people when I talk to them about why I like books so much. I'm like, you realize, like, if it's a good book, I should say, because anyone can write a book, but like if it's a good book, like by a person who's like very knowledgeable, it's like the person has spent their entire life dedicated to that field, and they're distilling pretty much 80% of the knowledge that you need to know into very like well-structured writing that you can finish in like 10 hours. Like that's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos, Invent and Wander. I gotta Invent and Wonder or Wander?
Wander. Yeah. He talks about that too in Lex. He's a big fan of wandering, which I won't go too deep into because I want to we want to get to the other topics, but I will say, he like a lot of people, I think the way he said it was like, when he goes into solving a problem, he wanders, because if he knew like how much time, like, hey, is it going to take 3 hours to solve? Like it's going to be like more linear in nature. Like I'm going to go here to here to solve this problem. But he allows himself to like more or less wander. And I forget the other thing he said, like his favorite way to go into a meeting is like a really clear, concise, problem, or like he talks about like having a sheet of paper with like really clear information on it. And then forget the other way he said it, like a messy meeting where like they just kind of like wander and like go into solving the problem where there's no defined way that they're going to go about it. They just kind of, I guess.
Yeah, no one brings their like predetermined like thoughts or biases or whatever. It's kind of just like, let's figure this out on the fly kind of thing.
Yeah, there's no like structured outline of like, there's no like, it's not like the algorithm with Elon, I don't think.
Okay.
Where it's like, we're going to go to like these 5 things and like, he's like very like more abstract invention.
Love it.
Wandering. So
yeah. And the Lex Friedman and Bezos episode was good. There's a few notes I jotted down, but it sounds like you're gonna get to that at some point. So we'll talk about Jeff more detail. But cool. Sure. How many? Do you have 2 more books or?
I'll just I have one. Dude, I could have like 5 more. But the last one I will say is I got it from Derek Sivers, like book recommendations, which is that website's so cool because you can just like go through. You can just hit best, or I think title, and then like he has notes on like 300 books or something crazy. Yeah, and it's
I love his URL also.
Yeah, sorry, Sivers. Yeah, Sivers.
Go for it. My bad.
Yeah, it's Awaken the Giant, Tony Robbins. And if you would have asked me this before I would have read it, I would have been like, yeah, like, okay. But I really enjoyed it because I'll preface with like when it was written. I think it was written like in 89 or something. Like it's like 30 years old or something.
Whoa.
Yeah, let me see when
Bro. I thought it would have been written. I didn't even think it was written in the 90s. I thought it was written in like the 2000s.
1991.
Still, dude.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's like 32 years old. 33 years old.
Yeah. So the one thing I will say, and Derek says it too, because he also has Derek Sivers. 1 second. He has when he rereads something. So he'll be like initially. I think he has like initially read, and then if he rereads it, and then he has like a current summary, which is cool. Oh. And I will agree with the same thing he said, which is it's along like there's a bunch of like outdated references in there, but still at the heart of it, like the way like the core philosophies, like the way of thinking frameworks are like, I think just as strong today. Maybe not all of them, but then I was also going to say when I read like about or listen to like a Huberman and the neuroscience and the psychology of like Jordan Peterson or like all these different great thinkers, they say the same things. Like and he's kind of like he's more along the lines of like a Jeff Bezos, just super clear, concise thinking. you got pleasure and pain. Pull those two levers, just like super clear and concise things, but they're super actionable. So that, yeah, that's definitely one for me.
Two things you mentioned. One, Tim, you reminded me that Tim Ferriss has also mentioned that he's like the 4 hour work week is so outdated. He's like, I talk about using like going to magazine stands and like, he's like, it's terrible, but he's like the core things in that book still to this day ring true. So I think it's the same thing with that book. It sounds
exactly.
Like. And two, I think Tony Robbins, I haven't read any of his books, but there was like a week or two of like a couple years ago where I really got into like all of his talks and stuff. And like, he's so compelling. And I think he just, more than anything, knows how to make you feel something. Like he's so in touch with like people's emotions. I don't know. When I watch Tony Robbins, I'm like, fuck yeah. Like I'm doing stuff. Like we're getting at, like, he's just so good at that. So I got to read that book. I bought it. I have it on my shelf. 2 people, you and someone else I know, have read it this year and have recommended it now. So I feel like that's a sign for a read.
There you go.
In the new year.
Well, I thought about this for like half a second when I was reading it. Read it also through, imagine like Hormozy wrote it. I know this will sound weird at first, but like a lot of just the simple pain, pleasure, run towards pleasure, away from pain kind of things, like raise your standards, his like clear, concise thinking. I actually think that they are very similar in a lot of ways. That's one other guy that's like, yeah. Which I thought
good to know. Cool. Yeah, and of course, if Hormozy wrote it, I would have read it twice this year. So
yeah. Yeah, because I just thought about like his tweets. Like a lot of his tweets are like the same ideas, just written another way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess I need to read the book to figure it out, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah. All right. Cool. That's the last one. I could talk about.
Yeah. So I have one. It's a half thought, and then we'll move on to the next big question here. But this one, you actually recommended it earlier this year. Or you said that you were reading it, and I never really. It kind of was in the back of my mind, and then it got brought up a few times. I downloaded it and stayed on my Kindle for a while, and I only started reading it like I want to say last week. And dude, it is like last night specifically. I read like maybe 20 or 30 pages. It's blowing my mind. Like
really?
It's changed the way I think about my day to day, and it actually like the way he writes about this is so beautiful. It's like inspiring me to like. This is going to sound so corny, but it's like inspiring me to like live life a little bit more. Like it's crazy how writing can do that. And it's actually inspired a new action that I have. And I will share that in a sec. I know I'm really teasing everyone here, but the book by a guy named Matthew Dix, it's called Storyworthy.
Yes.
And so this book is about, and you probably know better than I do, but there's these big competitions called Moth Slams, such a weird name, but they're storytelling. Look, there's the book right there. There's storytelling competitions. He is a 5-time Grand Slam winner or something. Basically like world-renowned storyteller. Mm-hmm. You recommended this book to me, and you specifically talked about writing down a story per day. He calls it homework for life. And I started doing that. And specifically last night, the thing that blew my mind was he talks about these things called 5-second moments. And it changed my mind on like how to tell stories and just like what even is a good story. And he's like, people think that a good story is some insane chaotic thing happened. You almost lost your arm or you got in a huge car accident. He's like, no, like that's not the thing, because one, people can't relate to that. That's not like what every human's been through. He's like, the thing that really makes a good story are these 5-second moments that like emotionally transform you forever. And so he talks about this huge car crash that he got into. And you think that would be the climax of the story, how he almost died on the side of a street. But the real climax of the story is when you get to the hospital, his family members leave for a moment to go check on the car. He's alone. He's feeling down and sad, and he doesn't feel like anyone's around to support him. And all of a sudden, all the people that he worked with at McDonald's came and were like cheering him on as he went into the surgery room. And he's like, that 5-second moment, he's like, I will never forget those 5 seconds. He's like, I don't even care about the car crash or almost dying. It's like like supportive friend. Anyways, so that's an amazing book and story, and he's amazing at telling it. But it's the homework for life thing I've been doing is like changing just the way I've been kind of approaching day to day.
Great, dude. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Man. I'll be honest, I forgot about that book. It is fantastic. It is fantastic. I do remember that saying any story that you tell, you want to boil it down to like yeah, that 5 seconds, get it down to those 5 seconds where like you had like a transformative thing in your life like actually happen. Yeah.
And one more, no, and it's so true. And you never, for me at least, like I make YouTube videos, so I always feel like I need to have some like huge epiphany to make a video about, and it's really like liberated me now, literally since last night, to just be like, oh, it doesn't have to be this huge thing. It just has to be something that moved me from one state to another. You know, like that's it. It doesn't have to
for
be
sure.
this huge thing. And the homework for life thing that he talks about is just like at the end of the day, write down something, like a story of sorts. And I know I'm dragging this on. We'll get on. It's almost 30 minutes on the book section. But I actually set up a Google form that gets prompted through. So I set up an iPhone reminder that prompts me to fill out a Google form that then populates an Excel sheet. And so every day now at 8:30 or 9 o'clock, I get basically saying like, hey, do your homework for life. So then what's the story that happened today? And then on the other side, like on the like further right on that Excel sheet, I have like associated memories or like memories that came throughout the day. And what I'm finding is the more that I write down this like a story that happened in the day, the more old stories that come flooding back. And so last night I'm lying in bed and I wrote down like 6 stories that I completely forgot about. I'm like, that was hilarious. Or that was terrifying, or whatever. It's unbelievable how much of this stuff flows back. So I would recommend anyone listening, and you, Lewis, if you haven't been doing it recently, to jump back on it. It's like actually changing my brain chemistry. It's crazy.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah,
that is wild. Especially, I think the way he talks about it to do, like it only takes like a minute to do. Like you can go into like all you can write 6 or 10 or whatever stories if you want, but like it only takes like a second like to really write down. That's the other thing. It's really low friction.
That's incredible. Yeah, and you get better at it because right now it's hard to think about what happened in the day. But after he's been doing it for how many years? Like he knows. He says right in the moment he knows when it happens. And so it almost makes you more, we talked about awareness last episode, makes you more aware of your life because you're like, oh, this is going to be a story, or this could be a story.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, going forward too, because I'm thinking like at least right now. Like obviously like right now and you're like thinking about, okay, what did I do today? And then maybe like 2 moving forward, like you start the day and you're like, okay, what could I do that would be a good story as well?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, what would make a good story?
So that's interesting.
Yeah, cool, dude. Nice.
Yeah, man. So any more appreciate that.
We can put in like honorable mentions. We don't have to go into them, but we probably should.
You know what, man? I think like realistically, I probably could give a bunch, but like those are those are ones, man. Yeah, those are the 2 that like really moved me this year. So I'm just gonna leave it at that. Nice, and then that third one from Matthew Dix. Yeah, if you want, throw in any.
Cool. I won't go into them, but I think I read it this year, but Endure, Cam Haines. That's sweet. Love that.
Endure by Cam Haines.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think I read it this year. Maybe it was last year, but I'm just looking at them. Tools of Titans was a great reminder, and then The Creative Act, Rick Rubin, sweet.
Which one?
The Creative Act by Rick Rubin.
Oh, by Rick Rubin. Yes.
I think that's what it's called.
Yeah. Or the Creative Act. Yeah. I haven't read through it, but I had it on my bedside table for a while, and it would be like kind of a nightly, like one passage, almost like a Bible or something.
Nice. And then it's not a book, but Paul Graham's essays,
dude,
are incredible.
So good.
They're incredible.
So good. We could talk about it a bit more of that if in the favorite learning from this year. Maybe those are some. But anyways, I don't know if you have any specific, but yeah, Paul Graham is amazing, and they're pretty long. Like they're pretty long. So some of them are.
Some of them are like actually not that bad.
Yeah,
but some of them are extensive, for sure.